see. Well, Mr. Ambassador and distinguished audience, I can't tell you what a thrill it is to be here in Dublin. I can just feel the excitement in this room. And that excitement is so appropriate to what I want to talk about today. I'm going to talk about an exhibition at the Museum of American History at the Smithsonian called Places of Invention, and we're trying to find out the answers to the kind of questions that Susan just mentioned. But I have a feeling now, being in Dublin, that we're watching a birth or rebirth of one of these places. And as an historian, I can't miss a moment like this, and I just want to get out my notes and start documenting what's happening, because it is happening in front of us, and it's a very strange thing. These places, like Dublin today, other places of invention, high-tech places, seem almost miraculous and maybe, well, should I say a virgin birth? But we know it's not, because it's actually a coupling between cultures today. I just thought of that before I came up here, that it all figures. So, everybody knows, and we've heard about this today, a great deal about the contributions of the creative economy and to invention and innovation to our economies at the city, the regional, and even the national level. It's seen as a force of rebirth and regeneration for many places around the world, including in the United States. What do we learn from history? Why do these things happen? Well, the first thing I know is obviously they can be encouraged by taxes and by investments and so forth, but one thing I did find out is you can't really engineer them, though people try ad infinitum to do this, and they can't be forced. Basically, these hotspots, and you probably feel it here, they're spontaneous phenomena. They rise, and regrettably, they fall, and sometimes to rise again. I think Silicon Valley may have gone through 3 incarnations by now. They're happening all the time and everywhere, not just in Silicon Valley, even though that's held up as the archetype of it. But I want to stress today that there's a continuum between Silicon Valley and no-name places, some of which I'll mention today. The key thing is that they're happening all around us, and they're happening all the time, even though you may not know that they're aborting. So I want you to keep that in mind, and the real question is why here, why now? And we want to say history has a use. These are not new phenomena. I'm going to be talking about some of the factors that we've heard about today a great deal, like collaboration, networking, flexibility, educational factors. They're very important, and talents. But what I really want to have you come away with in this lightning round is to look at the mixing of people and cultures and ideas, particularly the arts and technology. These are all crucial to these developments. And I think if you come away with just that impression, it's this rich mix of cultures that's very important. And what you have when these start happening, and you're probably feeling this now, is something like a chain reaction. Invention builds upon invention and innovation builds upon art builds upon invention. It's an organic process, so you really can't try to figure out except to try to discern some common factors that are here. So I'm going to be talking about American places. We're at the Museum of American History. But bear in mind, first of all, these are the kind of places that are building up in America and working with you now in Ireland. We've chosen these places not because they're unique at all, but because they are representative geographically and so forth. But we mostly wanted to say that there's a certain any place aspect to these. They can really happen anywhere, and sometimes you don't even know they're happening. And I'm going to be going through these very diverse locations, and so I won't reiterate them now. You can almost see them on your screen, but I'll go ahead through them very quickly, and again, impressionistically, so I apologize for the speed of this. So they go back in history. Our oldest case study, you probably could go back to Renaissance Florence or to 12th century Baghdad for these kinds of creative places. But we're going to start Hartford, Connecticut, Renaissance Florence, Hartford, Connecticut. But that's really where the American system of manufacturers began. That's identified by these mass production, interchangeable parts. And the kinds of things we chose to highlight here, all of these factors we discussed so far apply, but we want to look at networking and knowledge sharing as being very important, and there's a 19th century map of Hartford. It started with guns, I have to say. The armory practice, the Colt Armory, and there's Samuel Colt. But the interesting thing about this is what Colt did became known quickly around the world through World's Fairs, and then caught on in Hartford in all kinds of ways, and went and then moved to machine tools and precision manufacturing, a Hartford machine shop. Bicycles were built, and that was the breakthrough way of transportation in that period. And also automobiles, too, were being built in Hartford. Hartford went on some bad times, but it was a very hot spot, believe me, in the late 19th century, and they're trying to regenerate themselves using the high-tech ideas we were talking about. It was also a culture center. It's very important to keep this in mind, and attracted the likes of Mark Twain, who was a patented inventor himself, but lost his shirt on investing in inventions, and he lost it so much he had to go to Europe to revive his treasure by talking about a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court, and it was about Hartford. Our next up, I'm showing these chronologically, but there really is no chronological causal relationship between them. We look at Hollywood, and we zero in on Technicolor, the creation of Technicolor, which is both a technical innovation and a cultural, artistic innovation. We know of Hollywood, of course, as the creative industries center, but really what came together there is the arts and technology. This is an actual color camera that was used, a major invention that had its origins at MIT on the East Coast, and people in Boston didn't like the weather and came to the West Coast when there was a boom in California. And this is the camera, the very camera that was used. We have this in our collections. This is the sound stage of the Judy Garland, the Wizard of Oz. And here's the result of that. You probably can't see this, but believe me, it's Technicolor happening here. And we talk about the very rich mix of people. This is Natalie Kalmus, who was the color guru on how to choose colors to make it match with costumes. Her husband was key to inventing that camera and was educated at MIT. What I want to talk about in all of these, very briefly, is that there is the third space, the social spaces that are very crucial. Where does this cultural mixing happen? It happens at parties like this, at events like this, but in those days it happened at restaurants like the Brown Derby, where you got investment money coming together with producers and directors and inventors and innovators of all kinds. These were crucial. This was not just simply fun to be in these places. This is where it was happening. So we move on now to, in this lightning round, to the Twin Cities, that is Minneapolis, St. Paul, and we could have, in the 50s, looked at the rise of the computer industry at that time, but we chose instead to look at the rise of the medical devices. It's probably its most resilient industry in that period, and in particularly the pacemaker, both external and internal, which has saved countless lives. And we look there at the risk-taking. There's a lot of risk involved in making these pacemakers and trying them, especially on the part of the patients early on. And then collaboration was key to this. And what was that collaboration about? It was about bringing together a pioneering surgeon and in a pioneering hospital for heart surgery. This is Walton Lillenhigh. And he realized that he needed the help of electrical engineers who were there repairing the instruments in the hospital to keep patients alive after the surgery, keep the heart beating when he had done heart surgery. And one of these very enterprising engineers was Earl Bakken, inventor of the pacemaker, and he is an electrical engineer sitting in his, what else is it? Basement, his garage, his inventor's garage, and not restricted to Hewlett-Packard and the Apple garages in Silicon Valley. They're right here in snowbound Minneapolis. Here is one of, you probably can't see this at all with the light, the brilliant light in here, but this is his first schematic of the pacemaker. Now, here's the bow to the culture side. Bakken, by his own testimony, was heavily influenced by the movie Frankenstein in a positive way. He saw this as a way to combine the human being with our technologies, which, of course, is what it's all about today. Now, the next one is improbable and kind of fits with the entertainment we had at the beginning, except opposite. This is the Bronx, New York, in the 1970s, and it's the birthplace of hip-hop. I don't think we heard hip-hop this morning. It sounded like something else, but this is a place that people don't usually look at. It was a devastated place by the creation of the Cross Bronx Expressway in that period, which had the effect of making an orphan out of the South Bronx, which was a place very rich in immigrants and African Americans, Europeans, but not rich in treasure in any way. And it was considered a destitute and very dangerous area, and it's featured in all kinds of movies. But you saw there the force of adaptability and flexibility and creativity and the sheer will to make something of their environment on the part of those that made hip hop. And if you look at this sketch, which you can't see, but it separates the Bronx into the areas that were identified with major hip hop artists. Here we go with Grandmaster Flash, and these are things we have in the exhibition as well. And it's all about scratching and basically scavenging things from destitute areas like this, putting together the electronics for all this, self-educated in electronics. There's also it's a multi-art form, that's very important. Graffiti, which is now, with Banksy, gotten to be an art form. We have B-girls who are performing, and then B-boys who were doing breakdancing. Of course, we come to Silicon Valley, the archetype for all of this in the 1970s and 80s, and we want to really look at the collaborative area about this and knowledge sharing. We could have focused on anything. Intel, by the way, as I said, Intel was a major funder of our exhibit. Eamon. A lot of it had to do with the Knowledge Center, Stanford University, and Frederick Terman. But hobbyists were also involved in the Home Brew Club, who put out their newsletter. And of course, it was associated very closely to the iconic couple, the genius engineer, Steve Wozniak, and the visionary of Apple, Steve Jobs. And we feature also Susan Kerr, who makes the Mac icons you're using every day. Social spaces are very important. This is where the venture capitalists meet still today on Sand Hill Road with the inventors and entrepreneurs, the startup wizards in that area. These are crucial for it. Now we finish up with a place that, like here, is happening right now. It's Fort Collins, Colorado in the 2010s, and these are some of the problem solving, critical thinking, and the environmentalism very key. The people who live here prize where they live, and they want to keep it clean, and they want to spread the message to the world. This is one of the founders of the energy and the engines and energy conversion labs in Colorado State University, and it's making cleaner engines, and it's making them much more efficient. The main thing here is he's creating these spin-off companies in that very space, and that it's actually a renovated powerhouse in that area, an abandoned one, Amy Prieto's Prieto Battery. And again, here's that third space. It's not an Irish pub, but it really does its job. The New Belgian brewery there. I recommend that to you. Though it's like Colson Newcastle for you all here. But and main thing in these last two slides is just show you how this innovative culture has permeated even the beer industry there. These are the values that permeate that. So just to conclude, we talked here about the place factors, this cultural mixing, the collaboration and communication, risk-taking, flexibility, and invention. But we're talking about place, but basically it's all about people flocking to places like this today, but especially people who are flocking to Dublin today to make Dublin the exciting place it is. Thank you very much.